Okay, paranormal enthusiasts. I decided since it's getting close to October, I'll go ahead and throw out a few of these ghost stories of mine that I had. I'm actually having to redo this video. I didn't really like what I said at the beginning of it. So let me get started. Back in 2003, late February of 2003, my grandfather passed away from liver cancer. And he had cancer all over. He had pretty much a cancer on his tailbone, about a softball-sized mass on his tailbone. They thought they saw a spot on his liver as well. I mean, on his pancreas. And my grandmother decided not to have him operated on and anything, because if it was in his liver, it could be anywhere, and that's what the doctors had said. So we just tried to make him as comfortable as possible, and then eventually he passed away about 4 or 5 weeks later, after he was going through all these procedures and whatnot. But anyway, fast forward to 2010. My grandmother, my mom, my brother, his family decided they're going to go to SeaWorld. My grandmother tells me that I could take the dogs with me to my place and take care of them there. Or I could just come over every once in a while and check on the dogs, feed them every morning and afternoon or whatever. And I decided to take the path of least resistance and just move into my grandmother's house, because I grew up there, and just move in there for the week and take care of the dogs that way. It'd be a lot easier on me. So that's what I did. I took some clothes and took them over to my grandmother's house. I saw the family out before they got away. And eventually I went out and had let the dogs outside. And while I was out there, I was smoking a cigarette on the front porch, and I was looking across the street, kind of the view that you see before you in this picture. The only difference was it had a lot of bushes and shrubs across on the other side, so you had a lot of shrubbery. And the only way you could see the marsh grass was through pockets in between the bushes and stuff like this. So it was a little bit harder to see the marsh. I was looking at the water level, and I thought to myself, man, that water level's high. Well, as soon as I thought that, I caught a whiff of what smelled like my grandfather. And it smelled like he had walked right up behind me or right beside me. And this was in the daytime now. It wasn't at nighttime. I might have freaked out a little bit if it was at night, but it was in the daytime. And I turned around and looked behind me. Nobody was there. Nothing else happened that day. The next day, I was out of cigarettes. And I didn't feel like going to the ATM machine, and I didn't feel like using my debit card at the convenience store, because I had my identity stolen with my debit card like 5 years earlier in 2005. And I had it stolen by some guy in Denmark or Ireland or somewhere. Anyway, I thought to myself, well, my granddad he had some cigars, and I bet they might be still okay. I mean, 7 years old cigar, I don't know how good it'll be, but I'll try it. And one cigar would last me 3 or 4 days. So I was like, let me go see if I can find some. So I plundered through the house, going through all kind of cabinets and drawers and everything else, and couldn't find any. I said, I know he's still got some here. I just don't know where they are. So I kind of threw up my hands and was like, I give up. As soon as I thought that to myself, I caught the whiff of the cigar. And I thought to myself, okay, that's wrong, Granddad, if that's you. Because how dare you walk past me? I'm fiending for some nicotine, and here you are going to walk past me with an ethereal cigar. You better give me a hit off that ethereal stogie. Come on now. And I actually said that aloud, and I laughed at myself. Here I am talking to no one except for the possible ghost. It wasn't until later I found out that I had some. I didn't have any money in my wallet, but I did have some in a pair of pants that I had washed. And I forgot to check the pockets, so I did get the cigarettes, but I got them later in the day, because I didn't really know I had any money, cash on me. I just didn't have them in the pants that I was wearing at the time. So anyway, I decided that I've already had 2 experiences in 2 days, and I started thinking maybe I ought to do an EVP session. And I don't know if I did it the second day, the day I got the cigar smell, or I did it the third day. But I was washing some clothes, and I had them running through the dryer at this point, and I found my brother's old digital recorder he used in college. And I said, you know what? If I can find some batteries for this thing, if it still works, I'm going to do an EVP session. I didn't even think about my MP3 player. I think I may have had it with me at that time, but I don't know if I did or not. But anyway, I used my brother's digital recorder to do an EVP session. So I took the clothes out the dryer when they were finished, took them back there to my old bedroom and started folding up clothes Well, I had the MP3 player sit down in the hallway, or the digital recorder, that is. And I asked it all kind of questions. This went on for probably, I could say, a good 5-10 minutes. And when I got finished folding up the clothes, I went and grabbed the recorder, grabbed my earbuds, and started listening to it. I sat there on the bed with my back up against the headboard and just listened. I'd have to crank it. I had to turn it down when I'd hear me asking the question because it was so loud. I didn't realize it was going to be that loud. Otherwise, I would have put it a little further down the hallway because I didn't realize it would be echoing and bouncing off the walls like it was doing. But anyway, as soon as I get finished asking the question, I would crank the volume up and you'd hear that infamous hiss sound, that well, I never heard anything, but I didn't listen to the whole thing. And I started freaking myself out. I started thinking, okay, I'm asking these questions and I'm waiting for that answer, that some kind of noise or something. And I'm like, okay, Granddad, are you here? And it goes, no, I'm not your grandfather. I'm going to kill you. If I heard something like that, I would freak the heck out. I would have actually come off the bed, levitated off the bed, and gone flying through the wall, and feet never touching the ground. If I'd heard something like that, it would have been something like Bugs Bunny or Tom and Jerry when they go flying through a wall, and that silhouette of the wall is the last position that their body went through as they went through the wall. I wouldn't have been running for the door, wouldn't have rolled up a window and knocked the screen out and go diving out of that. No, it wouldn't have been none of that. Or just dive through the screen altogether. I would have just raised up and gone straight through the wall. Feet never touching the ground. And I was like, you know what? I could be playing around with something that could, I could be opening up a door. I could be conjuring up something, and then I'm going to have to deal with it the rest of this week, and then my grandmother's going to have to deal with it when she comes back. It's not something I want to do. So I didn't listen to it. I quit listening to it. I freaked myself out. It makes it sound like a wimp, but I don't really like playing with the other side like that. I really don't, because you get into playing with things that you don't quite understand. But I digress. Anyway, I didn't listen to it, and I deleted it. So the day went normal. Nothing happened. Nothing. So later that night, I had already been playing Red Dead Redemption. I'd been playing it for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and I dozed off. Didn't know what time it was. I was steadily just playing that game, and I dozed off. And I was like, man, I'm just so tired. I can't stay awake. And when I woke back up, I probably wasn't asleep, a minute or so. I woke back up, and I was like, I know I didn't just fall asleep. I looked at the clock on the cable box, and it was 10:30 at night. I'm like, whoa. I'm just getting warmed up at 10:30. Come on now. Because I had my days and nights mixed up. You could have played Slaughter's Up All Night, Sleep All Day anthem for me, and that would have been me at that time. And I was thinking, that's not like me. Why am I so tired now? And so I looked at my grandmother's Boston Terrier, Prissy, was sitting on my lap. And I said, Prissy, you about ready to go to bed? She looked up at me. I shut down the Xbox and the television, slid the recliner back, and she and I migrated to the other end of the house where my old bed was. So we crashed on the old bed. I was laying on my back. She got right up against my right leg, and I didn't leave myself much room to turn to the left. If I had to roll over on my left side, there wasn't much room to deal with. But I managed to do it. I had to lift myself up and turn, lift myself up, turn. Anyway, I got tired of laying on my back. It started hurting my back a little bit, so I rolled over on my left side, and I was looking straight down the hallway, about what you see before you right now. That's about how it looked. And I was just letting my eyes just wander around down this hallway, and I was like, okay, I'm awake now. That walk from one end of the house woke me up. I don't feel like playing Xbox anymore. Maybe I go back in that room, kick back in the recliner again, and watch TV. Maybe I fall asleep, maybe I don't, but I can't go to sleep now. Number one, it was too quiet, and number two, that walk, it made me, woke me up, got the blood flowing. So anyway, I sat there and I was like, nah, I really probably should go to sleep. And I couldn't make myself go to sleep, so my eyes were still wandering, just going in different directions in this hallway, All of a sudden, I see something. It's on the right side of the wall. And it looks like a spider is making a really ultra-fast web, but it's in the shape of a human head. And then it's a neck, shoulders, and it goes all the way to the ground. And I'm like, that looks like a silhouette. and it's standing, I guess, what you would consider perpendicular to the wall, and it looks like it's looking at me. And I'm thinking, I've never seen anybody in my family stand against the wall like that except myself. I know I've seen it in movies, but nobody in my family. So what am I looking at here? And the effect that this thing had, if you want to call it that, the only thing I can tell you that looks close enough to this thing, what I saw in the hallway, would be the predator when he cloaks himself. You know, the jungle came alive and took him, you know. I was thinking to myself, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? I hadn't fallen asleep. I actually sat up in the bed and was still looking at this thing. And I thought to myself, where's the digital recorder? I could slide it down there, or I could hold on to it. I was thinking I was just going to slide it down there and try to communicate with it. And I was like, uh-oh, the recorder's at the other end of the house where I was sitting playing video games. Oh, no. And I'd actually took the batteries out. So I'd have to go put batteries in it, come back, and it'd be gone by then. And I'm thinking, oh, God. So I'm sitting there looking at it. I didn't even think to try to say anything to it. I was amazed that this thing was standing there. And I was like, now what would happen if this thing tries to stand up and then comes flying at me real fast? I guess I close the door? I did have a shotgun close by, but I don't think that's going to work on a shadow person. It's just going to go right through them. I'm in trouble. The dogs never reacted. There was a dog. Prissy was next to me. The other dog was at the end of the hallway to the right. He was in another room. To the right, at the end of this hallway, you go to the right, you're bumping into the dining room table, and then just past that dining room table, if you stay going in that same direction, you go into the Florida room, which is where the other dog was. And the only thing that was keeping him in there was one of these little gate barriers that you just slide, you know. So he didn't growl, he didn't bark, nothing. Prissy didn't raise her head and look down the hallway, nothing. And I thought about that. I was like, you know, they always say that dogs and cats can sense things that we usually can't. I mean, a dog can hear or smell a person that's walking around outside your house, like Peeping Tom kind of thing. They would hear it or see it or smell it before you could. But they never did react. And I asked my buddy Chris about that, and he said, well, maybe it's been there in the house since the dogs were purchased. And I thought about it. I said, maybe, because my grandfather passed away in 2003. Prissy was purchased in 2008. And I believe the other dog was purchased in 2009 or maybe somewhere in 2010. I believe 2009, though. So it's very possible that this thing has been part of the house the whole time, and maybe it's my grandfather. Now, here's a picture of my grandfather standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. This is how thin this figure was. And here's a picture of the hallway with the shadow figure in it, or the closest thing I could find to a shadow figure. And this is pretty much what it looked like. I was leaned up against the wall, and I was just looking at this thing. And it took, I'd say when I first started noticing it, it took a good 30, 45 seconds for it to actually get to a certain peak. And I could still see through it, and it was just ever so slightly tinted, darker than everything behind it. So the light that was coming in the background was brighter than this thing, but it wasn't a solid mass where you couldn't see through it. It was very lightly tinted. I mean, I almost had trouble spotting it. And it was just there. It never moved, didn't wave its hand, didn't flip me off. It didn't have red eyes. It didn't have a fedora type of hat like Freddy Krueger. It didn't have anything. But it was there. And as I started noticing I was losing it where I couldn't see it much anymore, I was like, where is it? And I started moving my head around. I felt like a giraffe at that point. And I was like, I can't see it anymore. Well, I actually got up and walked down the hallway. I did. And I got right around that bathroom where this thing was standing, and I was waiting for something to happen. Nothing happened. My hairs did stand up, but there was no cold spot or anything. Evidently, it was gone. And I thought about that. You know, I was like, maybe my grandfather knew he'd left me a message on that digital recording. He knew I didn't listen to it, so he was like, I'm going to show you I'm here. You didn't listen to the recording. You chickened out. I'm going to show you I'm here. I'm not saying it was him. I hope it was. I hope it wasn't something else, but he did pass away in the house. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. That was my adventure. I haven't seen anything like that since. And I don't know, as long as it's not a bad thing, I don't mind seeing stuff like that, as long as it's not demonic or diabolical in any way. But you never know what you're going to get until it shows up, and then you're like, oh, I didn't ask for this. I really did not. Anyway. Peace out, paranormal investigators and enthusiasts.